Od djetinjstva hoćemo veću brzinu. Tragamo za većom slobodom. I jedina granica je naša mašta. Zato kad odrastemo, znamo šta želimo. XDSL, super brzi internet. Dajemo više, BH Telekom.
Koproducent TV serijala Intervju 20, BH Telekom. Ozbiljan, a ipak pristupačan. Šarmantan, ali i odmeren. Diplomata u čijim očima možete pročitati i prijateljstvo. To je on, William Hague, ministar vanjskih poslova Ujedinjenog kraljevstva. Nije ovo bila njegova prva posjeta Bosni i Hercegovini. I odlično on poznaje i situaciju i probleme i lijepe činjenice o našoj državi. On je prije svega političar koji izuzetno cijeni stajališta i vrijeme svake osobe sa kojom dođe u kontakt. Savršeno procjenjuje izgovorene riječi, okolnosti i prilike. Naučilo ga je tome dugogodišnje političko iskustvo. Upravo je u politiku zakoračio kao veoma mlad. Sa samo 16 godina William Hague znao je šta želi i kako da se ophodi sa mnogo starijim i iskusnijim političarima i dobivao je glasne aplauze za svoje stajališta. Ni hladna Margaret Thatcher nije tada štedila dlanove da podrži mladog Hagea. Izgledalo je to ovako.
There is at least one school, I think it's in London, where the pupils are allowed to win just one race each, for fear that to win more would make the other pupils seem inferior. That is a classic illustration of the socialist state, which draws nearer with every Labour government, and which Conservatives have never reversed. It's all right for some of you. Half of you won't be here in 30 or 40 years' time.
Iako je javnost u Velikoj Britaniji često viđala Williama Hagea u društvu Thatcherove, upravo je ona spriječila imenovanje 21-godišnjeg Hagea na mjesto posebnog savjetnika. Nije to mnogo zabrinulo sposobnog Williama Hagea. Uvijek spreman na izazove koračao je dalje. I svi su njegovi koraci bili u pravom smjeru. A evo zapravo ko je on. William Hague rođen je 26. marta 1961. godine u engleskom Rotherhamu. Već su na koledžu prepoznali njegovu strast za politički dijalog, pa nije bilo iznenađujuće kada je izabran za predsjednika Oksfordske unije i za Univerzitetsku asocijaciju konzervativista. Nakon obrazovanja u Velikoj Britaniji nastavio je edukaciju i u francuskoj INSEAD poslovnoj školi. William Hague je konzervativac, političar, historičar i pisac. Upravo je pisanje jedna od njegovih velikih strasti. Napisao je 2 knjige. Prva je bila biografija Williama Pitta mlađeg, koji je objavio 2004. godine i odmah osvojio prestižnu nagradu za knjigu godine iz oblasti historije. Njegova naredna knjiga bila je biografija Williama Wilberforcea, a objavio je 2007. godine. U maju 2010. godine William Hague preuzeo je dužnost britanskog šefa diplomacije i tu dužnost obnaša i sada. Izuzetno je ponosan na vlastiti angažman tokom kreiranja i usvajanja zakona o diskriminaciji zbog invalidnosti 1995. godine. I posebno je ponosan na stvaranje inicijative za prevenciju seksualnog nasilja u konfliktnim područjima. Upravo ga je ova inicijativa koju je stvorio zajedno sa poznatom filmskom umjetnicom Angelinom Jolie dovela ovog marta u Bosnu i Hercegovinu. Iako je na intervju stigao tek nekoliko minuta nakon dolaska u Sarajevo, umor nismo primijetili na njegovom licu. Bio je nasmijan i raspoložen, baš kao čovjek koji voli državu u koju je stigao. Takav je on, William Hague. Njegov dolazak u Bosnu i Hercegovinu privukao je veliku pažnju domaćih i inozemnih medija, a dio iz emisije Intervju 20, koji je istu večer objavljen na BHT1, objavilo je, citiralo i prenijelo desetine elektronskih i printanih sredstava informiranja. Večeras, ekskluzivno u vanrednom izdanju emisije Intervju 20, predstavljamo ministra vanjskih poslova Ujedinjenog kraljevstva Williama Hagea.
Dragi gledatelji, dobrodošli u specijalno vanredno izdanje emisije Intervju 20. Iznimna mi je čast večeras predstaviti vam ministra vanjskih poslova Ujedinjenog kraljevstva, gospodina Williama Hagea. Foreign Secretary Hague, welcome to Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you.
And welcome to program of television of Bosnia and Herzegovina and TV show Interview 20.
It's a great pleasure to be on it. Thank you.
First, let me start by asking about current situation in Ukraine. I know that you this week have a meeting in Hague, foreign ministers meeting. You have information from today about this meeting in the United Nations. Your comment?
Well, there has been an important vote today in the United Nations General Assembly about the situation in Ukraine, particularly in Crimea, calling for the territorial integrity of Ukraine to be respected. And that vote has been carried by 100 countries voting for it and only 11 voting against. So that is a 10-to-1 majority. It demonstrates the isolation of Russia in the world on this issue, and that most of the countries in the world cannot support the violation of the independence and the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Now, we are making every diplomatic effort possible to try to de-escalate this crisis. We continue to talk to Russia about this, but since we have not yet resolved it, it's important to be clear that Russia cannot just take part in all international institutions and bodies. So at the G7 meeting in The Hague with President Obama and the other leaders of the world's largest economies, we decided that we will meet as the G7, not as the G8. Russia would have hosted the summit later this year, but this instead will be the G7 working together in the world. And I think we will have to be ready for a different state of relations with Russia in the next few years than the relations we've had in the last 20 years. That is a pity, but we will have to be ready for that. And in that time, European countries, for instance, will reduce their dependence on energy supplies from Russia, and it will be a different relationship.
So I must ask you, you said a few days ago that Ukraine crisis is the most serious test of European security in this century so far. What is the solution for Crimea?
The solution is for Russia and Ukraine to talk to each other, to resolve these disputes peacefully, for everybody now to agree on a de-escalation. That means for Russia not having a threatening position towards Ukraine. It means Russia joining the rest of us in trying to support the future of Ukraine and making sure that Ukraine can succeed economically. So there are these things that are a way forward, but it does need Russia and Ukraine to be talking to each other directly. And I welcome the fact that the foreign ministers of Russia and Ukraine met for the first time on Monday. I think we need to see more meetings between the Russian government and the Ukrainian government, and we are all ready to support that.
Wide-ranging sanctions have been imposed by European Union and the United States. What more can European Union, United Kingdom, United States do?
We can do a lot more if necessary.
What?
And this would be more far-reaching sanctions in the area of trade, of finance, of the economy more generally than the sanctions that we've had so far. These sanctions are now in preparation. They are being prepared by the European Commission with the participation of EU member states. And those sanctions are ready for if there is any further escalation by Russia of this crisis in Ukraine.
Mr. Hague, who can remove Russian soldiers from Crimea?
Well, clearly Russia doesn't have the intention of removing soldiers from Crimea. And so they are clearly not proposing to do that. What we're looking at is a wider de-escalation of this crisis, and as I say, a different state of relations with Russia, if there is no solution to it.
When diplomacy does not bring result, is it time for something else, for something new?
I think we should always be open to efforts that are new, but we are trying every effort here. The UN Secretary General, of course, has been to Moscow and to Kiev. We've tried every diplomatic opportunity to find a way forward. In the absence of agreement with Russia about the future of Ukraine, then we must do what we can to support Ukraine, to try to make sure it can be a successful country, not a country that is kept permanently weak by Russia. And so we will do what we can with IMF support. Britain is already contributing to the technical capabilities of the Ukrainian government in financial management and these sorts of things where they really need expertise from the rest of the world. And we look to them, the Ukrainian leaders, to end the culture of corruption that has existed in Ukraine, to make a fresh start politically, to conduct their elections at the end of May in a way that is clearly fair to all concerned. So there are big responsibilities on the Ukrainian leaders as well as on the rest of us.
This is very interesting. Swedish Foreign Minister Carl Bildt said that Crimea was just the Russian president's opening game. What do you think? Which game?
Well, clearly
War game, football game.
It's a complex. I don't know for Carl Bildt to define what sort of game it is. It's very important that it is not followed up by further moves by Russia against Ukraine. And that is why we are preparing other sanctions in the European Union, so is the United States. That is why the vote has taken place in the General Assembly that I was just talking about. The world is making clear what it thinks, and even countries like China are abstaining at the United Nations, a country that usually nearly always votes with Russia on matters that are important for Russia, is abstaining. Moscow should be taking real notice of that.
I must read something. Strock Talbot, former Deputy US Secretary in the Clinton administration, said that Putin is already going further than just in Crimea. He said, now that doesn't mean that he has actually formally moved in, annexed territory, had an overt invasion. So, Foreign Secretary Hague, who can forbid Russia to go invade more than just Crimea?
Well, this is what we're talking about. This is why we are preparing additional measures in Washington and in Brussels. So that work is going on now. That's why we're trying to make sure the Ukrainian people have the opportunity to succeed themselves. It's why we have supported the deployment of monitors from the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And agreement has now been reached on monitors who will go in, including to the east and south of Ukraine, so that we can all hear what is happening in that area and be aware of any provocation or any attempt from outside to destabilize those parts of Ukraine. All of these things are designed to make clear to Russia the very serious diplomatic and economic price that would be paid from further intensifying this crisis and further moves against Ukraine.
What message does the Crimea referendum send to other nations? It is very interesting for us in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Your comment?
Well, this is an illegitimate referendum. This is clearly not a fair or legal or legitimate referendum. And that is very obvious from the presence of tens of thousands of troops, a referendum that was held at a few days' notice, with no campaigning by the other side, with the Ukrainian leaders having no access to that part of their country. It's not a referendum that can be respected anywhere in the world.
But Putin ignored that, and the international law and constitution of Ukraine, everything.
Of course, Russia has made the choice to ignore those considerations. But again, as we can see in the United Nations today, these things are not ignored by the rest of the world. And the reason that so many countries, the reason why 100 countries today have voted as they have, is because the rest of the world can see this is not a democratic procedure. It is a mockery of democracy by any of the standards of the democratic world.
When discussing sending possible messages to the others, we have our own local comment here by the leader of the small entity of Republic Srpska. I'm sure that you know who is he. According to Mr. Dodik, the Crimea referendum is wholly legal, and so are Russian actions. Please, your comment.
Well, you can, as you can tell from everything else I've been saying, these are not legal actions, first of all. This is against the Charter of the United Nations. It is against all principles of international law, specifically against Russia's agreements with Ukraine, including the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, including the Black Sea Fleet Basing Memorandum. Russia has broken all of these things in its actions. So anyone who regards these actions as legal would have a very distorted view of the law. And clearly it is not democratic. Nobody really who believes in democratic processes can think that a referendum held at the barrel of a Kalashnikov is a free and democratic expression of people's wishes.
I will read you something Milorad Dodik said, quote, "We are looking at the same situation in the world. So what's happening in Italy? We see that Scotland will come quickly to a referendum. Something is happening in Catalonia. These are capital experience for Republic of Srpska. We will follow the example of the best international experience when the times come." So Foreign Secretary Hague, Milorad Dodik, regularly mentions the secession of Republika Srpska from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and now he said that smaller entity of Republika Srpska is similar to Scotland, so it is copycat case.
Well,
I must ask you
of
this.
course, and Scotland, of course, is a great contrast with what has happened in Crimea. There we are having a referendum in September, on the 18th of September this year. That is a referendum held legally with the agreement of all parts of the United Kingdom. In fact, the law to allow that referendum to be held was passed in London. It is the British government that has said that it is legal and has provided for a referendum in Scotland. So that is very, very different, of course. They're the absolute opposite of what has happened in Crimea. And I think what is important here in Bosnia-Herzegovina is to recognize the importance of being able to function as a state. I am a very strong supporter of this country. I've always taken a great interest in this country, and I believe in this country's ability to join its neighbors and to have a European future. This is what the people of Bosnia-Herzegovina need, this opportunity in the future. And so I am a strong supporter of future membership of the European Union and of NATO for Bosnia. But this will only happen if Bosnia can function as a country. And to me, this means it is important that the map is finished and that people are able to work together. And efforts to try to dissolve Bosnia-Herzegovina will be very strongly resisted by the United Kingdom and by much of the rest of the international community.
Do you have some special message to Milorad Dodik, maybe?
Well, this is a message to everybody. This is not a message to any one individual. It is a message of hope for the whole country. You have big friends in the world who want to see you included in what all of us do. But it is also a warning that political leaders in this country need to summon up the leadership, the ability, the political willpower to make the breakthroughs that are necessary in order for Bosnians to enjoy what people in Croatia and Serbia and Albania and all around the Balkans are going to be able to enjoy in the European Union and in NATO.
Serbia very strongly support Russian and the referendum, Crimea referendum, so Serbia wants to go in the European Union. Is it a problem now?
Well, as countries come towards membership of the European Union, they of course are expected to work with the policies of the European Union. After all, we decide on many things together in the European Union. I go every month to the Foreign Affairs Council of the European Union and we agree our approach on many foreign policy issues together, on Iran, on Syria, on Ukraine. And so for membership of the European Union, something that Serbia and other countries want to be able to have, it is important to be able to work together on foreign policy issues. That will be part of of course, is part of what we are looking for in all of the countries of the Western Balkans over the coming years.
Let's talk now about Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Of course.
The Dayton Agreement ended the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but didn't provide a long-term solution for the country to progress and improve. So, is it time for United Kingdom, European Union, United States to be involved in creating positive changes here, Mr. Hague?
Yes, I think it is very much time for that, and we are involved in that. I was delighted to welcome to London last month many young leaders, maybe the future leaders of Bosnia, who came on a program funded by the British government to study our democracy, to see what happens in Britain, to learn about our foreign policy. And so we always want to support and to discuss the future with people who can really take on a leading role in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I think it's important for us to support serious economic and social reforms, for the European Union to be ready to do that. Baroness Ashton has been here recently saying exactly this. And it's important for us all to encourage important issues to be resolved, issues that are blocking the progress of Bosnia towards the international community. Everybody knows what they are. There was Sejdić-Finci in the European Union, defence property in NATO.
A lot of problems.
And it's important for us all to encourage the resolution of these things, and for this country to be able to become a better functioning state, so that its people have, as I say, the opportunity that other countries are going to have. Why should people in Bosnia be left behind in what happens in the Balkans over the next decade?
Okay, how do you read ideas made by some Bosnian Croat political leaders that now it's a time to make a third entity in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
I think the important thing to concentrate on is making sure that Bosnia-Herzegovina works as a state, that it is able to solve the issues that I've just been talking about. So my advice would be to concentrate on those things and on responding to the demand for economic and social reform. After all, there have been protests here in this country in recent weeks.
What is your comment about this protest and demonstration in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Well, of course, coming from another country, we must never regard ourselves as the expert on these things. But I think it is understandable that people want to see economic and social change. They want to see political leadership. They want to see issues that we've just been discussing resolved. After all, the ability to resolve such issues will affect decisively the opportunities for all the young people of this country. So it's understandable that people are unhappy at times with the progress that is being made. But I look forward to discussing on my visit with some of the people some of the political leaders, of course, but also with people who've been involved in some of those protests as to what they were trying to achieve.
What is your opinion? Can protests really bring change here?
The most important thing in a democratic country is for democracy to bring change and for political leaders to lead it. And when I say that, I'm not lecturing the leaders of Bosnia. We have to do this in any country. It's all our responsibility in any country. In Britain in the last few years, we've had to change many things, particularly in our economy, and we're now succeeding in doing so. This happens in every country. It's the political leaders who have the responsibility to work together, even when they come from differing points of view, to resolve the problems of the country and to open up opportunity for the people who live in that country. We've been doing it in a totally different way. We've been doing this in Britain in a coalition government. We've had two parties together in government that haven't been in government together since the Second World War. But we've made it work for the last 4 years so that British businesses can succeed, so the British economy can recover. Now we have our unemployment falling faster than at any time in our history. Well, the young people of Bosnia deserve the same thing. They deserve to see falling unemployment and more opportunities in the future. So this is, as in any country, it's down to the political leaders to do it.
So I must ask you, what is your message for political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina? Direct message.
My message is what I've just been saying. This huge responsibility that rests on them to make progress towards international institutions, to make sure that there is a properly functioning state, to make sure their country is not left out of what other countries are going to benefit from in future years. And it is their responsibility to make sure that these things happen.
Do you have a message to citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Well, the message, I think, to the citizens is, again, what I was saying a moment ago, you have some great friends in the world, and we will do a lot to help you and support you, as we have done in many different ways over different years, and we're ready to do so again. But there are things that you have to do as well, and therefore use every democratic opportunity to push your country in the right direction. And you will find there are open arms in the rest of Europe to welcome you.
I hope that it is possible here. So, where do you see Bosnia and Herzegovina in 10 years' time?
Well, I would hope to see Bosnia and Herzegovina in the European Union, in NATO, part of the transatlantic alliance, with people able to travel freely around the rest of the European Union, able to pursue all the opportunities in education, in business, all the opportunities in life that come from that. That really should be the vision. And in these institutions, with neighbouring countries, because this, of course, is the best future for the whole of the Western Balkans in the future. Not just for Bosnia, it's the best future for this entire region, and it is the best solution to the very difficult past and the many tragic events of the past here.
Will the European Union help Bosnia and Herzegovina move forward? Really?
Yes, really? The European Union is certainly ready to help, and you've seen in recent visits from Commissioner Füle, from High Representative Ashton, they have been setting out what the European Union can do to help. But I stress again, it's important for the conditions to be met. It's very important for this country to do what it needs to do, and we will be ready to respond.
UN Special Representative Angelina Jolie start an initiative on preventing sexual violence in a conflict. Could you tell us something about this, please?
Well, this is a project that she and I started 2 years ago. And in June this year, we will hold a global summit involving 140 countries, including armies and judges from all over the world, to try to change the whole global attitude to this subject. Terrible things have happened in recent times, including here in Bosnia, with tens of thousands of people raped in the conflicts of the 1990s. Terrible things have happened in many other countries in the world, in Colombia, in South America, or in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Africa, and many other countries. Now, this is not something that we can just accept in the world. We cannot say it is just okay that we are going to not worry if hundreds of thousands of people are systematically raped as a weapon of war, and that hardly anyone is brought to justice for these crimes. This is not an act. We cannot accept a world in which that happens. And so we are trying to make sure the world is conscious of this, that we agree new international standards on the investigation and documentation of these crimes, that more prosecutions take place, that victims are properly supported and helped, rather than being seen as people who have something wrong with them. And we're trying to bring the whole world together to address this. Bosnia has an important role to play
Yes, it is a very important story in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So, is it true, Mr. Hague, that Bosnia and Herzegovina inspired you for this project?
Yes, yes it is.
Tell me something about it.
Well, this is partly because of I was conscious from previous visits here of what happened here, and partly because Angelina Jolie made a very powerful film, The Land of Blood and Honey. And that was why I met her. I agreed to show her film in the British Foreign Office. And so I met her, and I met the actors, who were Bosnian actors actually, who did a very good job in that film. And that film demonstrates the real horror of what happened and the need to do something about it. And so we have worked together ever since, and we have visited some of the other countries that I have mentioned. But the fact that this can happen in Europe, in our lifetimes, demonstrates to all of us that this is not just it's not a faraway problem. And people here know this better than anybody.
Maybe our political leaders should learn from you and your initiative, Mr. Hague.
Well, I will be discussing it with them on this visit, and inviting them to take part in the conference in June. And I will be discussing this initiative with people from the military here. Britain will be contributing to the training of peacekeepers, some of whom are trained here in Bosnia. And we'll be contributing to their training so that they are more conscious of the problems of sexual violence in conflict. So we will work together with many people in this country to learn from their experience, their knowledge, and their ideas about what we should do.
Secretary, you are also a writer, am I right? Mm-hmm. So you wrote about William Wilberforce and the abolition of slavery. Mm-hmm. Are you William Hague, a man who will end rape in the war zones?
Well, we shall see, but this will take much more than one man. This will take men and women from all over the world to work together. So I am trying to demonstrate to a much wider number of people that we have to take action on this. But I, one man with one woman, Angelina Jolie, are trying to do the job of waking everybody up to the need to tackle this problem.
What is your opinion about Bosnia and Herzegovina?
A country with immense opportunity, and for which I feel a very deep friendship, personally and through my country. So let's make the most of the opportunity together.
So, finally, Foreign Secretary, I have one special question for you. Your staff tell me before this interview that I cannot ask that. But I will ask you. I am very famous because I always ask what I want. So you and Russian President Putin share the passion for judo.
That is correct.
Who is stronger? What is your opinion? Who is stronger, better in the ring?
Well, President Putin and I we haven't had the opportunity to test this, and I think he did judo for a lot longer than I did. So
you never know.
I am not suggesting a bout of judo.
Would you win? Would you win?
Well, I would try, but I'm not proposing it.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
And happy birthday, Mr. Hague.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Od djetinjstva hoćemo veću brzinu. Tragamo za većom slobodom. I jedina granica je naša mašta. Zato kad odrastemo, znamo šta želimo. XDSL, super brzi internet. Dajemo više, BH Telekom.